Today on the Region Free Gamers podcast.
Hello, Mike Hagar here.
Mayor Hagar, what happened to Final Fight?
What? What happened to Jessica? Who is this?
It's Paul. I'm actually just calling about your game series. I don't know anything about your daughter.
You son of a...
Mayor Hagar, no, not the suplex! Hello everyone, welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast fluent in gaming. My name is Paul Romalo, and with me today, taking his time to perfect the beat, but he still has love for the streets, Mr. Arnaldo Perez.
Yo, what's up?
The man with the power level permanently over 9,000, Mr. Geoff Ivats.
9,000? That's me. That's me. Always.
And back from Mount Doom, the return of the king, podcaster emeritus, Mr. Ozzy Garcia.
Back from the dead. The show's an undead if you must. I'm glad to be back.
I think in the timeline of the show, you left like one episode ago, so the fact that you're coming back now is fucking like so on brand for us, honestly.
We're nothing if not inconsistent, guys. So. Oh man, Mount Doom was a little bit balmy, man. Definitely not a place to visit in July.
Okay, but here's the most important question about Mount Doom, though. Did their McDonald's serve the Filet O Fish?
Yes,
Lord.
and it was extra roasty, and I loved it.
You love the Filet O Fish.
Even in Mount Doom, the Filet O Fish is pretty consistent. So regardless of where you are, you could be in Japan, you could be in the Netherlands, where Geoff is located, you'll get the same quality Filet O Fish.
Yeah,
I can't believe, I'm glad that I learned of this after you decided to leave, so I still had nice memories of us, and I could say things that I meant.
It's okay, Arnie. I mean, not everyone can be as enlightened as I am.
I just love your very liberal application of just for men all over that beard, because you can only be an old man with a white beard, yet somehow it looks so dark and lush. I hope you don't go Giuliani on us and there's like some stuff like, you know, coming down your neck there.
Seeping down the neck.
Yeah.
The Filet O Fish has very good coloring properties, so I have a healthy diet of it that makes my beard very luscious. So just a pro tip for those of you over 40.
Man, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that you and... You know what? Okay, so first things first. Gotta welcome our new patron, former guest, Mr. Mike Doucette. You guys will know him from our Phantasy Star episode, our Sly Cooper episode. For whatever reason, the episodes that he's on, they do really well. I say for whatever reason. Actually, it's because he's awesome, but now he's also helping us out financially, so we really appreciate him. And
he's like the
funny,
fifth Beatle.
Honest.
Yeah, he's like someone that just pops up from time to time, and he just makes us all better.
Yeah, exactly.
It was really nice of him to join at the $1,000 a month tier. That was pretty sick.
It's really padding. It's really padding Arnie's income.
It's really padding the stats.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that Mike's first contribution after joining us on Discord was to complain about our attack on the Filet O Fish in our previous episode.
It was uncalled for. What did the Filet O Fish do to you? I mean,
I can't believe. I'm so shocked. I'm shocked.
I was in my car. I was in my car listening to this in the middle of
and you veered off the road.
And I literally veered off the road just to try to find a McDonald's. And unfortunately, the McDonald's had like a 30-minute line, so I decided to do against it. I was going to show you a picture of me eating a Filet O Fish, and lo and behold, yesterday, my fiance decides that she wants McDonald's, and I'm like, perfect opportunity. I am going to get back at these guys for this very vicious, unheralded, uncalled for attack. No, Filet O Fish is fantastic.
I think it's less that you like the Filet O Fish, and more that of all the items on the McDonald's menu, the Quarter Pounder,
it survived more than the Quarter Pounder,
the Big Mac, the double cheeseburger, and you go down this line and you pick out the Filet O Fish, and you're like, "This is my sandwich."
Listen, Arnie. Out of all the items that were hit by COVID during the COVID crisis,
sir.
The Filet O Fish was one of the ones that sustained its profitability. It speaks to its quality. So, there you go.
So many people were having their
rest
last
my
meals.
case, Your Honor.
I went to McDonald's yesterday, and I ordered a double Big Mac, a fist of meat, like a normal human being.
Double Big Mac. So they just they double up on the meat inside the bun, or it's literally 2 Big Macs on top of each other.
4 patties.
I'm trying to get it here.
Four
Four
patties.
of Big
4
Mac.
patties.
Same amount of bread, but 4 patties.
Unlike the McChicken, Sir Arnaldo.
Geoff is looking. He's barely hiding his disgust.
Sorry. Just eat 2 quarter pounders, no?
I ate the filet of fish with an eye towards seeing whether it was genuine, authentic fish. And it was pure 100% farm-raised tilapia. You know, I don't know what's in the McChicken, Arnie, even though I love it. It's great. It's fantastic. But I don't know what's in it. It may be chicken.
Love,
maybe not.
joy, happiness, generally good feelings.
Oh, it's good to be back, guys. Just pardon with Arnie and his bad Sonic opinions, his terrible Sonic opinions. And now
Terrible McDonald's opinion.
Now, as it so
terrible
happens,
Sonic
he also
opinion.
has terrible McDonald's opinions as well. So
And some terrible movie opinions. but
and
we-
terrible
we're not
movie
into that.
opinions, but we can't go into that because that would be an entirely different episode.
I will be vindicated in the end. When the scholars return hundreds of years from now and dig up these recordings, they'll be like, "Man, there was a really smart guy on this show," and the other guy.
I
don't
am
know
pretty
what the
sure
fuck
that
was on.
I can't run for office anymore after this episode. I think as soon as they pop out the filet o fish opinion, I think they're gonna be like, we can't trust this guy. We can't trust this guy with our finances.
I'm gonna be the anonymous man in the attack ad. And then he just said he wanted the filet o fish. I have no idea what it was at.
Oh man! All right, cool.
What are we doing today, Paul?
Yes, today's episode. So it's actually our first patron request episode. I'm really hyped about this. Our patron Joao has requested that we do an episode on failed game franchises. And, I'm going through the subject matter for this episode, and I gotta say, this is a better idea for an episode than anything we've come up with in a year. Honestly.
Depends. I mean, we had the bad games. Was the bad games episode within the last year? Because I think that was a fantastic series.
Dude, that was 2 weeks ago.
Well, no, but the first one. I mean, the first one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a little over a year ago.
Yeah. So I guess not within the last year. But yeah, Joao doing our work for us.
Yeah, man. Really.
That's as it should be.
Yeah.
Proper management from Joao there, giving us a goal.
So, before we get to that though, speaking of patrons, of course, gotta say thank you to all our patrons and everyone who's just listening for the fun of it. We really appreciate all of you, and we'd appreciate you just that little bit more if you kindly leave us a review as well on your podcast app of choice. 5 stars, please. So our first, Joao gave us a few game series to look at. F-Zero, Wipeout, Final Fight, Bloody Roar, Castlevania, which it's really sad to call it a failed game franchise now, but I mean, it is what it is, right? And Contra.
Silent Hill.
Oh, dude, Silent Hill. He didn't give us that one, but that's a whole other ball of wax. So I'm looking through these games. Castlevania and Contra, honestly, that's an entire episode just on Konami and Konami's fall from grace and so on. So I don't think we'll go through Castlevania and Contra today. So we're actually going to start off with Final Fight. I'm very happy to start off with Final Fight. It's so much fun researching these episodes and finding things that I just never saw before. And with Final Fight, boy, there's a ton. So Final Fight, do we even really need to introduce Final Fight? This is a game that was released
Come on, man.
in the arcade in 1989. And I remember actually playing it in the arcade in 1989 because I'm an old man. And the thing that stuck out the most to me about Final Fight was the gigantic sprites. More than anything else, right? Because at that time we had Double Dragon 2, and there were a few Double Dragon clones out there, none of them really as successful. And then Final Fight comes along and it's like, holy shit, look at this, right? It looked great. It played great. Double Dragon, I loved Double Dragon. But one thing I will say about Double Dragon is that the controls felt very floaty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your jumps were weird. the elbow move that was really the only move you needed to win the game. That one, like when you hit an enemy with it, there was always like a half a second where you weren't sure if it actually hit, and then the enemy goes down. So, not really the best controlling game, but it was a new genre at the time with Double Dragon. And then Final Fight comes along, and these floaty controls are just gone. Yep. Like when Cody punches a dude in the face in Final Fight, it is sharp, and you can hear the crack on, like the sound was fantastic. It was such an improvement. From what I understand, it was actually the result of Akira Yasuda, Capcom's artist, the creator of Chun-Li and Street Fighter 2 characters and so on. And so dude's a legend. He comes over to the USA, and he sees that virtually everybody's playing Double Dragon, unlike in Japan, where Double Dragon is not quite the success that it was in the USA. So he goes back to Capcom Japan, and he's like, yo, we got to make a better Double Dragon. The Americans are just eating this up. So thankfully, Final Fight came out before Street Fighter 2 and was able to eat our quarters before Street Fighter 2 just kind of took over everything, right?
And I find it pretty amazing that Final Fight was kind of the herald of the new era of 90s beat-em-ups. Yeah. Every beat-em-up that came after was kind of a Final Fight clone, or so they called it. And then it's kind of a Street Fighter adjacent franchise because it's always had connections to Street Fighter. And then Street Fighter 2 comes along, and then Street Fighter 2 kind of replaces the beat-em-up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. And it's an amazing game for the time. Honestly,
it really is.
The sprites hold up perfectly.
Yeah. They still look great today. It's almost a shame that Street Fighter 2 came out and just obliterated this whole genre, because you still had games in this genre being made. They were just never going to be as popular. Like I'm thinking Alien vs. Predator, that we played that a few years ago. Great game, but I never saw it when I was a kid. Never, because it was just Street Fighter 2 everywhere.
No, I mean, and Final Fight, unfortunately, it took me a long while to appreciate it, because my first experience with it, as I imagine for a lot of children at the time, was with the Super Nintendo version.
Yes.
And the Super Nintendo version was so gimped, it was so unfortunately deficient compared to the arcade version, that when you had something like Streets of Rage 2 to compare to, because I played this all after the fact, I just felt like, okay, Final Fight, I get why people like it, but it's personally not for me. It took me playing the arcade perfect version for me to appreciate what Final Fight did for the genre.
Yeah. The SNES version didn't do it any favors. They rushed that one out. They really needed the 2 players, and they just didn't get the 2-player version of it. So
it also didn't have Cody, I think, or no, it didn't have Guy. It didn't have Guy. That's the one that. Yeah, and then they released Final Fight Guy just to make up for that.
Yeah.
Just so that you could eventually charge a bunch of money to collectors that needed to complete their Final Fight. Exactly. That's the only reason why they released that game.
So, Final Fight, SNES, Final Fight 2, Final Fight 3. I don't think Final Fight 3 even came out in the arcades. I just remember playing Final Fight 2 on the SNES. Never saw it in arcades either. Yeah. Final Fight 2 I enjoyed. That was the game that they should have released with Final Fight 1. Yeah. And same kind of thing. 2D, side-scrolling, beat 'em up. I don't know about you guys, but I know in the arcades, it was all about Street Fighter 2. But at home, I was playing beat 'em ups still. I mean, obviously I was playing Street Fighter 2, but I was still playing beat 'em ups. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I went through the same thing as you, Paul. I remember my local sports centre swimming pool had Double Dragon, and I gave it a few goes, and I could never quite click with it. I was probably a little bit too young. I would have been 5 or 6, just too difficult. Yeah. But when Final Fight turned up, it just suddenly made arcade games incredibly, incredibly cool. And just hearing, I can still remember walking down the stairs towards the little canteen, and you can hear Final Fight and Street Fighter music kicking off the two machines, and
Yeah.
you were spoiled for choice. You didn't know which one to play first. Either way, you were going to get your ass kicked. So it's just a matter of which one is going to like last your well, over here it would have been 20p a credit, a quarter a credit. You just would have decided, okay, which one's going to last me longest. But yeah, I think for me and my friends, I had friends who had the Mega Drive, and it was all about the Streets of Rage. And my friends who had the Super Nintendos, it was all about the fighting games.
Yeah.
So it felt like there were two very different like classes of gamers when it came to fighting, and I think the Mega Drive owners just got that little bit more fortunate. I always felt like they got the better versions of those beat 'em ups.
Yeah.
Maybe Hyperstone Heist versus Turtles in Time. They kind of go blow for blow in comparisons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that the Super Nintendo, it's only after the fact that I've got into Final Fight 2 and 3 that I realized actually that they're pretty good home beat 'em up games.
They are.
There's nothing wrong with them at all. There's some decent characters and some very good sprite art in there.
But I think that's, Geoff, that's kind of leading into the reasons why the franchise failed. So Final Fight 2 and 3 came out just on the Super Nintendo. It didn't come out on arcades. And at that point, 3 came out in 95. So by 95, you already had the PS1. The Super Nintendo was a little bit long in the tooth. And the beat 'em up genre as a whole was just kind of seen as stagnant. And I don't think that for developers, I don't think they saw the beat 'em up genre as being viable any longer. And the release of Final Fight 3 kind of proved that, because it was very much criticized because it's more of the same. And the reality is, how much can you iterate upon a genre about just walking right and punching people?
A lot.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, as proven by Yakuza. So I think that they felt that with Final Fight 3, it proved their point that they just couldn't continue doing this. They had to find something different. So that's kind of what led to its eventual demise.
And boy, did they.
Yeah, that was the first nail in the coffin. There are several to come. And the next one is Final Fight Revenge. Now, I have to be honest with you, I didn't even know about Final Fight Revenge until a couple weeks ago. I am so happy that I know about this game now. So, in order to revive the franchise, what Capcom did was they did pretty much what a lot of companies at the time were doing. They took a property and they tried to make it into Street Fighter 2, right? Except at this time, we're now in the late 90s, early 2000s, so 2D art is kind of falling out of vogue, and you've got your 3D, your Tekkens, your Virtua Fighters, your Soul Blades, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So that's the logical place to go with Final Fight, obviously, right? So what Capcom does is they send this over to Capcom Studio Production 8. This is the team that also developed Maximo and eventually Final Fight Streetwise. So, some hits, some misses. But this is Capcom's American arm. They send it over to them, and they make this game. I'd say the closest analog, if I'm looking at it, is actually kind of Street Fighter EX, more so than Tekken or Virtua Fighter or what have you. I think that's the closest comparison.
It does feel like those Eureka games, the Eureka Street Fighters, and
that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Now you have like the X layer from like the Eureka stuff that they do. It's kind of a very particular type of fighting style.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very particular fans. They want this particular Eureka fighting game. I love seeing Eureka fighting game fans, man. They're so passionate about their weird 3D fighting game. I don't understand it myself. I mean, I enjoyed EX as much as the next person, but certainly not enough to be playing it regularly these days.
In a world of Street Fighter Third Strike, you pick Street Fighter EX3. You gotta give them some props for that.
They do, yeah, you do.
It's nothing if not distinct and quirky.
So that's probably the closest analog. Final Fight Revenge. I mean, what can you say, right? It's awful. It was released in arcades in '99 on the Sega Saturn in 2000, and bear in mind, the Dreamcast had already been out for a couple of years at this point. The Dreamcast comes out in 1998 in Japan. Final Fight Revenge, 2000, Sega Saturn, Japan only, of course. They're not releasing this on the America Sega Saturn in 2000. And what can you say, man? It's awful. It's awful. It was not very well reviewed. It's just, I mean, I haven't played it myself. I didn't even realize this, but finding a copy of it these days, forget about it. You know, given how late.
It's going for like $300 something. Yeah.
Yeah, over 300 US for sure. Just given how late it was released in the console's life cycle, and the fact that it has that Final Fight name, that game is worth a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Certainly not because of its quality, because you know it just looks terrible.
If you haven't seen this game, just keep in mind that this game came out 99, 2000. Just transport yourself back, to that time and see the games that came out around the same time. And just keep that image in your mind. Just keep it just glued to that, particular view. And then look at Final Fight Revenge. And then you will wonder, how was this released? Like, how did this even pass QA? How did they decide, we're going to put our brand on this? We're Capcom. We're going to put our seal of approval on this, baby. Because we think that we have a winner here.
Well, I don't think they thought they had a winner. That's why they didn't release it anywhere else. They probably were like 90% done with development. And we're like, fuck, I guess we gotta push this one out the door now.
The first
nice send
Tekken,
off to the Saturn. Bye.
The first Tekken, which released 6 years earlier, probably looks better than this game. That'd be a nice side by side to do, because the original Tekken has some interesting design decisions in it as well.
Yeah,
I would say. I mean, looking at it, it looks on par with Battle Arena Toshinden. To me, that's kind of how I saw the graphics.
It's like It's like the people from Battle Arena Toshinden just came over and just developed a Final Fight game.
It's funny because I don't know. For me, it was sort of like, I'm sure when it came out, like if you were in it in that moment, you're like, man, this is hot garbage. But like looking at it 20 years later, like if I didn't know this game was from 1999, I'd just be like, oh yeah, it's another like early like PS1 game. I don't give a fuck. Like it looks fine. They all look like jagged polygonal messes back then. But yeah, no, this one is, considering the time it came out in, this is pretty egregious.
Yeah, the really strange things looking at it, because I mean, I'd heard of this game maybe only a few years ago, just because it's Final Fight to me was always just this one arcade game and maybe a couple of SNES games. Mm. It's a really strange thing in 1999 to release a game where you only have characters from the original game. Mm-hmm. So you don't even incorporate the kind of the good characters that you have from the rest of the series.
Yeah.
The interesting thing of including sub-weapons and being able to pick things up, and maybe that's where we want to talk about some of the special moves that you can do. But like you can pick up I saw like a flamethrower which inflicts next to no damage when used on characters. There's some really like nice ideas that differentiate it from other fighters, but just executed so poorly. It's a real shame, because if you look at what the competition was at the time and what Namco, especially what Namco could produce with the same hardware, obviously they were using different hardware boards for their arcade machines. But it's a real bizarre one how Capcom just weren't able to fully make that jump. And they were obviously, I think in 98, 99, they were at the tail end of Street Fighter 3. I think they would have. Third Strike was around that time.
Yeah, I think so.
So they were still pumping out the jams on the 2B on the 2B motherboards.
Yeah,
I try to be as nice as possible here.
I think the first mistake was doing it on very outdated hardware. It was based on the Sega STV arcade board.
Yeah,
which at that point was 6 years old.
They'd already had Naomi for years by then.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so in a world where you had all these advanced arcade systems, I mean, the fact that they wedded themselves to this very old board just because I assume they wanted to port it to the Saturn, which was already dead by then, because the Dreamcast had already released in Japan in 1998. It looks kind of like a worse Dynamite Deca. That's kind of because it's based on the same arcade hardware. Yeah. So it has that polygonal blocky look, except it just looks a lot you know, you
It
can
looks
do
muddier.
You can do polygonal, but you can't do polygonal and jagged. Like, I don't know how you can achieve polygonal. Like, you can get a very low poly clean look, but this has a very low poly messy look, which I don't know how you achieve that. The only thing I can assume is that this Capcom studio, this was their first game, and they were just kind of, you know, they were just given this project just so that they could learn how to do maximal. And they just like learn on the spot. They just learn on the fly. That's the only thing I can assume.
That's the only thing I can assume too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was overseen by Japan, you know, by the Japan division. So they just had to implement the programming and stuff. So maybe we're giving them too much shit. Maybe this was all Japan, that they made all the bad decisions. And now this poor American studio has to get stuck with this bad game in its name. But I don't give American studios the benefit of the doubt, unfortunately. So
you're right when I mean, we're going to talk about Final Fight Streetwise momentarily, and that one definitely smacks of Japanese interference. So, you know, but we'll get to that in a second. Just the last thing about Final Fight Revenge that I have to say to our listeners: go check out the finishing moves.
Oh yeah,
they're fantastic.
It's
I don't really understand some of them. I actually don't understand any of them, really, quite frankly. The Hagar one in particular, like, I think, Arnie, I don't know why I'm asking you. I know you saw it, but like, I think in order to pull it off,
but like,
you have to do a double 360. While I kid you not, you have to do a double 360, which is not the end of the world. People do this with Zangief all the time, right?
Yeah.
You have to do a double 360 while your opponent is jumping at you and kicking.
Hell yeah.
And then Hagar can grab him out of the air and do.
How is this
super.
not at Evo, like, right now?
I'm pretty sure there has to be an audience for making like an evil subset championship of just bad fighting games.
Yeah, it's me. It's right here. This is the audience. Right
I
here.
would be all over that. I would pay money for that.
Dude, if they played Final Fight Revenge at Evo, I would definitely be a viewer. It would be, for me, it would be that and Guilty Gear and Soul Calibur. Those would be my three, with Final Fight Revenge like right at the top. That's the one I would make time to watch. But
I mean, so, you know, we can. It's quite easy when you look at the videos to laugh at the finishers. I saw a little bit. I saw like a long play, and the end credits. I mean, it's a really bizarre. I'm not sure if you guys saw what the final boss is, who the final boss is, and then how it goes into the credits.
No,
So
I don't think I did.
Please enlighten us. Enlighten us, Geoff.
So Ozzy, probably going to need to pick a name out of your head. But the final boss from the original game.
I forgot, man. I forgot.
I have it on the tip of my tongue.
Oh, good. No.
Damn. Anyway, that's fine.
Anyway, you fight him, but he's a zombie because he's died in the previous game.
Oh, hell yeah.
So he's a zombie.
already up here.
Yeah, and and in the credit scenes, it's him dancing to Thriller. So it is. I like to think that like they knew that they made this hot trash garbage game. It feels like they knew it, and they were just like, you know what, we're just gonna not take it too serious, not take ourselves too seriously.
How many games have sprites dancing to Michael Jackson's Thriller? This
Not
is
enough,
like a
Arnie.
trend.
Not enough.
This is a trend at this point.
Was it Geoff? Was it Belger? Was that the name of the?
That sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. I'm just fascinated by the fact that this development studio was just stuck in the 80s. I mean, they only use characters from 89. It's like they just stopped in time in 1989 and they don't know anything that happened afterwards. So they must have been thinking, I had to think that they were in cryogenic sleep. They were woken up and all of a sudden they were told make a video game. And they thought they were making some cutting edge stuff for 1989. And so they were like, and we're going to throw in Thriller. Because people are gonna love that. I don't know, Geoff. That sounds fantastic. That sounds lovely.
It looked great on the video. Yeah, maybe not $500 worth of your money to
no,
witness
maybe
it for
not.
yourself, but
maybe
but
not.
Listen, I mean, if you're Joe Schmo looking to put in some quarters and you see Final Fight and you see Capcom and you see a fighting game, you're like, this is gonna be good. I mean, you can't possibly go wrong with that. And then Revenge comes out and says, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Convincingly. Do I have the game for you?
You want to walk us into Streetwise, Paul? Because I'm dying to talk about this.
I know, Streetwise. So, Capcom Studio 8, You know, they get another kick at the can. Give Capcom credit. They wanted one more shot at Final Fight.
But let's give them their share, though. Let's give them their fair share. They had some good games in between that.
They did. Yeah. The Maximo games were excellent games. They cut their teeth on Final Fight Revenge. They learned what not to do. And then they released some good games after that. So the thing about Streetwise, though, again, like, we've got Capcom releasing another Final Fight game late in the system's lifespan. We're talking 2006 here on the PS2 for a Final Fight Streetwise, and by then, you know, we've already got the PS3, right? So somehow, again, similar to Final Fight Revenge, this is not exactly a technical showpiece for the system. It looks terrible. You know, like, if you had said that this was a launch title for the PS2, you know, you could have convinced me. I would have been like, yeah, it looks like a launch title, sure. The graphics are super muddy. Yeah. Movement, super slow. Yep. And I think the biggest crime, Ozzy, in this game is that the fighting, there just isn't that much fighting. It's Final Fight. And yet you're spending a lot of time, much like in Beatdown, Fists of Vengeance, just kind of walking around looking for fights.
Let me tell you what the Streetwise experience is like. So you open up the game, and it looks very blurry. It looks extremely blurry. It has that very dark gray look that late Xbox PS2 games had, kind of leading into the 360 generation, where everything was a little bit smoother, but still very gray, and just the aesthetic choices were just very poor. Yeah. And it kind of goes in media res, because we're fancy, so we use words like that. And this guy's getting beaten up, and you're like, what the hell's happening? And you could tell that they want to tell like a Guy Ritchie type, you know, interesting story about crime. And you don't know who the fuck these people are, first of all, because it's not Cody. It's not the Final Fight people that you know. And all of a sudden, you are thrust into this guy's life. He wakes up in the apartment. He's beaten up. And then you walk around a lot, basically. Yeah. Go from hub to hub, which have loading times, and try to find pimps and hustlers to beat up in a very poorly controlling scheme. It's offensive. That's in more ways than one. It's execrable. It's just delightfully bad in a very, very non-enjoyable way. So
the worst kind.
Beatdown Fist of Vengeance at least has the redeeming quality of being enjoyable in its badness. Yeah. Streetwise, by comparison, has nothing to redeem it whatsoever. And I played this game because people said that, hey, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. There's actually a pretty decent fighting game here.
Always a ringing endorsement.
I purchased this for $20. It's actually going up in price now. So if you ever want to experience this baby, get on the train now, because it's about to leave the station. And no, it's very bad. The best thing that you could probably say about this game is that it has a port of the arcade version, and even that is shitty because it's extremely laggy. And I don't know how they achieved it, but they managed to make it blurry as well. So I don't know. There's nothing to gain from this game. Just don't.
I started watching a long play of it.
Oh no!
And I decided that I wasn't actually gonna watch it. I was just gonna click a random time and just go with God. Yeah. And so I did, and somehow I think I ended up at the beginning of the game, because it's like exactly what Ozzy described. It's just this guy getting like pistol whipped in the face, and then waking up in a bed, and then going outside. And honestly, I remember nothing of it except for, and I don't know if I'm gonna get this right, but whenever he beats people up, they sometimes drop money on the ground. Oh, and whenever he picks up the money, he goes, money. Every single time.
I must have blocked that out of my mind. It must be so
I don't know
repressed.
if I'm saying, he says something to that effect. And I remember sitting in my apartment at what must have been like midnight, just like listening to this over and over again and going insane. Like it was an H.P. Lovecraft like sanity attack on me.
I mean, for those of you that don't know, every game around this time, post GTA 3, had to be very urban. It had to be very streetwise, as the kids call it. And
it is very clearly like sort of aping that GTA 3 aesthetic very
Dude, the
hard.
amount of swearing in this game, like that was another thing at this time. Is like after GTA, your game just had to have a lot of swear words, right? And it wasn't artful. It was just a lot of profanity for profanity's sake, which I love profanity, but I like it when it serves a purpose. You know what I mean?
and
when
like Scarface.
It actually has a power to it.
Yeah, like Scarface has a ton of profanity, but it works. It's not in there just because it's in there. You know what I mean? In these games, it's awkward.
It's really kind of like the pushy kind of effect that you're thinking you're doing something like the cool kids like, and you're thinking that you have a lot of tude, apostrophe tude, but there's not much to be gleaned from it. It's just cringy. So yeah, no, I mean, Final Fight Streetwise, it's definitely not Capcom's highest point, and I kind of put any bad decision from Capcom around this time on Keiji Inafune's shoes. Yeah. I don't see Inafune's name in the credits anywhere here, but I still put it on his doorstep.
They also do that thing where when you are fighting random guys on the street, the more like the higher your combo is, they have like some word next to it that like changes as the combo gets bigger.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was, I was like, I don't understand why this exists. Like, it's just like, bodacious, ridiculous, like, amazing.
But that's the thing. I think that part of what we're talking about here is why what we're trying to talk about is why franchises fail. Yeah. And the Final Fight idea is that it can possibly work in 3D, but I don't think that's the case. I think this is
that's absolutely not true.
I think this is more of the case that they just had really bad games.
That's exactly what it is. Like if you search on YouTube, you can find what Studio 8 was originally working on, which is Final Fight 7 Sons. That game is a game where the camera's on a rail, right? It's not doing this behind the back third person thing that Streetwise does so poorly. It's on a rail. There's constant enemies. There's no walking around looking for a fight, worried that the next fight might be your final one. They're just coming at you constantly. You don't have any worries about that. It looks more traditional. It looks better. I mean, it's unfinished. When you look at the videos, it's clearly an unfinished game. The graphics aren't, you know what I mean? But basically what they're showing there is the bones. And the bones of Seven Sons looks much, much better. I'm not going to say it looks great, but it looks much, much better than what Streetwise ended up turning into. So they send that over to Capcom Japan. They say, here's our initial build of Seven Sons. And Capcom, who published GTA in Japan, which was very successful there, more so than they expected, they were like, actually, guys, we need you to make this more like GTA. So we need more pointless walking around and less fighting. We need more swearing. We need it to be darker. We need it to be more urban. We need to basically take everything about GTA that wasn't important to GTA and its success and then put it in this game, because they just didn't that's my opinion anyway. They just didn't understand what made GTA so good. They took all the elements that they thought made it good, and then it turned into Final Fight Streetwise. And then and by the way, they released Beatdown Fist of Vengeance like within like 6 months of Streetwise or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, RFG Hall of Fame. RFG Hall of Fame, one of the best.
Yeah.
Truly.
No, it's honestly, there was so much. I think back to this period and, same as it ever was, I guess. But there are so many games that possibly got butchered and destroyed by suit intermeddling. And I feel bad for Division 8 because you could tell that they had something, that they understood what made Final Fight good, and they wanted to do that. But in their wisdom, the suits decided that was not where they should go. And that's how we end up with a game that the Region Free Gamers podcast can shit on some 15 years later.
Better late than never. So yeah, unfortunately, that's what we can point to with Final Fight. I mean, it was a fairly respected property, but I don't think Capcom could have foreseen the desire for a traditional beat 'em up coming back, right? Because now we've got Streets of Rage 4, of course, that's the big one from last year, and to a lesser extent, you've got River City Girls. Even the River City Ransom series is still kind of alive and well. You know, the 3DS had its River City Ransom games, so there is still demand for that. If Capcom had taken better care of that IP, I think they could still release a Final Fight game today, and they still might. Who knows? But boy, oh boy, it's really hard to come back from those two flops.
I still don't think that Capcom considers, or any other big publisher, I don't think they consider beat 'em ups viable. I think Sega is kind of in a class of its own with Yakuza, and even they decided to switch up to a traditional RPG mechanic. I think that if you're going to have a Final Fight revival, it has to be in the mold of what happened with Streets of Rage, which is just Sega decided to give the IP to indie developer and just let them do what they want with it under their supervision. So I think that's the only way. You need to have a smaller scope if you want to replicate the Final Fight experience.
Yeah, as well. I mean, at the moment, you've got Ghouls and Ghosts. Makamura has been remade. Well, they brought out a new one, and everyone I'm talking to who loves that series anyway says that this is a really good game.
Yeah.
Very, very hard, but it's a worthy entry into the series.
Yeah.
I do honestly think that there is a place for Final Fight to kind of find its way back into our libraries, and it doesn't need to be a $30, $40 game. It can be a $20 game that, you know, kind of download only. I think it could work really well. It's got a plethora of characters from its previous catalog. If they just stick to, as long as they keep it different from Streets of Rage 4 in terms of the art direction, in terms of the sprite size and things like that, still make it feel like Final Fight. I'm sure they'll find that the sales would be good, but is it a case of Capcom just need to do they trust another group to take it on again, or maybe have they feel like they've had their hands burnt by passing it on to other teams? I think obviously only they know, but it feels to me that Capcom of 2021 are in a much different place of 2005, 2006. I have a little bit more faith in them at the moment.
Just before we close it out, Final Fight is to Capcom what an older child, the firstborn child, is to a father that has a lot of expectations and potential, and they did good in high school. But then the younger kid, Street Fighter 2, comes along, and then they're grade A students, and they're always excelling. And then the older child just loses the attention, loses the spotlight, and then he turns to drugs. Then he turns to hanging out with seedy characters. Jesus. And you just forget about them. You disinherit him, and you hope that someday he comes back, but you don't have very high expectations. So
No, and he shows up at the family reunion, and he can't stop swearing. It's just, he's so profane.
He probably should get that checked. That's that might be a bad case of Tourette's. Should we go to the next one?
Yeah, well, before we do that, though, we're going to take a quick break. So when we come back, our next failed game franchise, I can't wait to talk about it. All right, everyone, and we're back. So the next game series requested by Joao for us to look at, one that I'm fond of, Bloody Roar.
Evo 2021, baby.
Evo.
It's bound to make a comeback. It's bound to make a comeback.
You think so? I'm not so sure. We'll go over that question at the end, but quick overview for people who haven't heard of Bloody Roar. First published in 1997 by Hudson Soft. And I actually didn't realize this until reading about it. Developed by Rising. I thought Rising just made shoot 'em ups. Yeah, Battle Garega. I hate them for Battle Garega.
It's evil. It's so evil. In a world in which you can choose whether Battle Garega is evil or not, you always choose evil.
yeah, exactly. God damn Battle Garega, man. I had, you know how many years I played that game without realizing that I was being punished for doing well, that the game wants you to do poorly so you can make it through. It's so evil. Anyway, Rising. Thank you guys. At least they made Bloody Roar. So I'll forgive them for the battle Garaga. But Bloody Roar, a 3D fighting game. I guess the closest analog would be Tekken, or maybe even I guess Tekken.
No,
and
no, I think it's a little bit different than Tekken.
No, I'm saying the closest. It's definitely different than Tekken.
No, I would say probably Virtua Fighter gets a little bit closer.
Disagree.
Because no, I mean let me explain the reasons why.
You're so wrong.
Let me explain the reasons why, Paul. Please.
He doesn't want to hear it.
The reason is because there is an arena component to Bloody Roar. And Tekken is pretty much on an infinite stage. So
yes.
the arena itself is very important to the Bloody Roar experience, because you can actually, once you do the transformation into a beast, which, spoiler alert, that's what happens in this game, you have this shockwave that sends out, and if you're close enough to the arena edge, you can actually knock them out. So it's kind of like a mixture of Tekken and Soul Calibur in terms of, the actual fighting itself and the sidestepping. It's very Tekken-like, but the arena component is more Soul Calibur-like.
All right, Geoff, now we got to pick our games that we think Bloody Roar is like. I'm going to go with Primal Rage.
In concept.
Much less farting in Bloody Roar than in Primal Rage.
It's true. Bloody Roar, though, I would say compared to Tekken, probably the most accessible of these 3D fighting games. And I think
very
that
accessible.
was I think that was kind of the secret to its success, because we played Bloody Roar and we were, we just jumped right in, and it had, it was a good game for button mashers and good game for experienced fighting game players. There was enough depth there that you could really, there was a lot to chew on there with Bloody Roar. So,
yeah, I mean, and with respect to that, I will say that this is a game that you could button mash to hell and have a hell of a good time with it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a good point to go back to my experience with it. I was living in Cuba when I first encountered Bloody Roar. I must have been like 9. And I saw it. It was part of a demo that had been passed to me. I mean, that's really what you did back then in Cuba. People got a hold of demos, and that's how you got to experience games. And I played Bloody Roar. There was a demo, and it was Fox, and it was on the seaside level. And I played it with my cousin, and we just kept replaying it over and over and over again. And Bloody Roar has a distinction of being the only game that I enjoyed it so much that, like, in the monthly call that I had with my father, because he was in the United States, I was back in Cuba, he was trying to get us out of the country. I made a point. I was a very shy kid, and I never asked for anything. And I told him, I want Bloody Roar. That's how much I enjoyed this game when I first played it in that demo. And when he delivered, but he didn't give me Bloody Roar 1 because this was 1999. He gave me Bloody Roar 2.
Nice.
And just very MVP move by my dad. I don't think he made that decision. It was probably some cousin of mine that told him buy this thing instead. But it's a game that, at least a game series that I have a lot of funness for, because it's so tied to my experience with that particular moment in my life.
Yeah. What about you guys, Arnie, Geoff?
I think I may have played, I know a friend of mine had, I want to say Bloody Roar 3, just from looking at the cover. I'm almost certain that's the one it was. And we may have played it a couple of times, but it was never one that we kept in the rotation. We were more Soul Calibur, Tekken people. So Bloody Roar would get play every once in a blue moon, and then we'd be like, oh yeah, this is fun. Let's never play this again.
Yeah. I mean, for me, going to what it compares to, I felt like it was always more like Soul Edge.
Yeah.
Soul Blade.
Yeah.
With the arena. With me and my mates, I mean, we had Bloody Roar, one of the many games that we had copied at the time. Nobody wanted to pay full price for it, to be honest. It was like a rental game, or at best copying, have it in your rotation that way. But and this is just personal opinion, how we, my friends, saw it. It was a gimmick. and it didn't really make us enjoy the fighting anymore. It was just like, oh, you turn into a rabbit. Cool. That's handy. And then we would go straight back to Tekken 3. Straight back. Every single time.
I don't know if this has to do with you being a few years older than me, but I love that gimmick. I ate it up. I was all over that gimmick. And I don't know. I mean, I went back and played the series yesterday again, and I played 1 and 2.
In Tekken, you just start as the bear. They just skip the whole transforming part.
Pretty much.
Or the panda.
What are you working towards?
I think the clone nature of it was more prominent in Tekken and Bloody Roar 3 and Bloody Roar 4. There, it really felt like, okay, these guys are just aping whatever other franchises out there. But with 1 and 2, I mean, what struck me when I played them again last night, they're very well-made games. Look, they're not reinventing the wheel here, but they play at a smooth 60 frames per second. The picture looks very clean. It's just, technically, it's very well-made. And it's fast. It feels very fast. It plays fast. And once you transform into the beast, you know, it doesn't change a ton, but it does feel like you have more of an ability to button mash, for example. And so it has that accessibility that anybody can play it. And if you want to explore it further and be more competitive, you can actually do that. So if to you, in a world of Tekken 3s, you had Tekken 3 and you love Tekken 3, then I could see how it would be difficult to go a step down to Bloody Roar. But I don't think there should be a knock against the quality of the game itself. I don't see it as a copy game. I would have purchased this game full MSRP back in the day if I had the opportunity. Because I think that it's a little bit gimmicky, but the gimmick works. There's gimmicks are only bad when they're just completely, they don't add anything to the experience. I think this gimmick in particular does add something to the experience. So I think more than anything in the sequel, one other thing about these games, at least the first and the second one, they are packed to the gills with content. Like, there are so many things that you can do in it. You can put big head mode, you can put kids mode. You can actually, something that I had never seen in fighting games before, you can just set matches up for you to watch, for the AI to fight against each other.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that I don't see at all in other fighting games. And so yesterday, I was playing it, and in the middle of playing it, I got a really bad nosebleed for whatever reason, so I couldn't really play anymore.
Too much excitement, dude. Too much excitement. It's Bloody Roar.
It's like one of those commercials from the 90s that it's so amazing that you just start bleeding from your nose.
It just punched you through the screen.
Exactly. And so I had to keep researching for this episode, and I just set forth a few fighters, and that's how I did it. But and then the bleeding got worse as I kept watching, so I decided that I had to stop it.
Oh man.
So I think it stands on its own merits. It's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think I have a similar, well, not necessarily similar experience to you, Ozzy, because I wasn't trying to escape Canada and Bloody Roar was sent to me by my dad in another country. But my friends and I picked it up, and unlike with Geoff, we stuck with it. We weren't huge Tekken people, and maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But it was fast, like you said. And I think we kind of got hooked on that speed. Because when you go from Virtua Fighter, which is probably the slowest of all those games, and for good reasons, Virtua Fighter's, it's a different thing. But when you go from that to Bloody Roar, and it's just fast, man, and you get kind of hooked on that. And we enjoyed the Beast gimmick. It was, it was cool.
It also has slow motion replays. It had slow motion replays for when you finished off a character. It's just, there were a lot of little nice touches that you could appreciate. And particularly in the sequel, it had a full story mode. So each character had a full story mode with dialogue. Like, the story wasn't good.
It's awful.
Zoantropes or something. Furries and militaries and whatever. But at least you had the story mode. You had something to work for, and you could unlock characters and the whole thing. So yeah. I mean, I found that it was a game, particularly when I didn't have a very wide selection of choices in what I could play in Cuba. it had so much lasting power that I could literally just have this game and play by myself and just have a good time with it without having, needing to have friends over. And it had enough lasting appeal for me to just stay with it. I feel like Tekken 3 is the same case, but I didn't have Tekken 3, unfortunately. I did not ask my dad for that one, unfortunately. Maybe I should have.
You made out all right. Bloody Roar 2 is,
I did okay.
That's a pretty good consolation prize.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the games over the course of the series, Bloody Roar 2, 3, 4, 4 being the last game in the series that was released in 2003, they undergo some changes to the fighting game mechanics, not too many over the course of time. Like Bloody Roar 2, they take your beast meter so that when you turn into a beast, same as Bloody Roar 1, but you can also go into what's called a rave mode in Bloody Roar 2, which is kind of like the Street Fighter Alpha custom combo. All your moves have increased speed. You have access to different moves. The caveat there, though, is that if you enter rave mode, you're done. You cannot turn into a beast for the rest of the game. And that can become a pretty big disadvantage, because whenever you do turn into a beast, it becomes a big advantage for a limited time.
You could also lose your hearing from all that raving.
So glad you're back. So,
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
So some extra little kind of fun facts here. Bloody Roar 3 actually on the PS2, GameCube, Xbox. The GameCube and Xbox versions of Bloody Roar 3, I think those are kind of commonly considered to be the best entries in the series. So if you're looking to play your best Bloody Roar, then you're looking for Bloody Roar 3 on the,
I would disagree.
on the Xbox.
I would disagree, Paul. I mean, and look, I think Bloody Roar 3, from a fighting perspective, it's probably the most mechanically sound entry in the series. If you're just looking for one-on-one fighting with friends, then yeah, I think Bloody Roar 3 is the one. If you're looking for a single-player experience and you're looking for content, I think Bloody Roar 2 is probably the pinnacle of that, because Bloody Roar 3 unfortunately took out the story mode. So that's kind of a knock against it.
It is a bit of a knock against it.
Yeah. But
it really, you're right. It does depend on what you're looking for. I mean, for me personally, I'd go with 3 just because it looks better. And like for me, fighting games are playing against other people. But you're right. Like Bloody Roar 2 has a better story mode. The story mode gets more and more nonsensical. It's really awesome.
I love it.
The Xbox version of Bloody Roar 3, it actually replaced the anime intro, the cutscenes, and the ending with CG graphics.
Criminal.
Because, they have to appeal to the Western audience.
No,
and
burn
the
it.
anime is just not going to cut it. The CG cutscenes actually in the Xbox version, though, they are pretty, they look good. I'm not going to lie. As dumb as I think it is to take your development budget and spend it on removing something that was already done well and replacing it with something else that's, pretty good. It was pretty good.
But I would say, I mean, one of the reasons why I prefer Bloody Roar 2 as well is because with Bloody Roar 3, it looked technically good for its time. It looks very plain nowadays.
Yes.
And Bloody Roar 2 doesn't suffer from the same fate. Bloody Roar 2, yes, it looks like a PlayStation game, but it still looks like a very high quality, polished PlayStation game. I don't feel the same way about the PS2, Bloody Roar 3. And maybe that's different in the Xbox and the GameCube version.
That was one of the things that we enjoyed when we were playing it. They were very vibrant looking games. They were really good. They were good eye candy.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about Final Fight Revenge earlier and what the abysmal attempts at doing polygonal graphics there, what Hudson Soft could do with the PlayStation was excellent. I thought for the first 2 games. The third one, from what I saw, when you go into the next gen, it started to look a little bit more generic.
Yes.
I guess, and yeah, we're using a bit more bland backgrounds. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess Ozzy, those PlayStation days, it really had character. It did stand out. If you were to see them, like when you have all these 3D polygonal fighters, like if you had them all in front of you on screens, Bloody Roar really would stand out, I think, from a graphical point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, I think part of the reason why they were so technically excellent, the first one and the second one, is that Aiding or Raising at the time developed them on CN1 hardware. So essentially, this was arcade hardware that was essentially a PS1. So it was very, I imagine, easy to port that arcade version into your home console. So you were getting pretty much an arcade perfect game in your console, which was not very typical of the time. I think Tekken was kind of the only other ones that were, quite on par in terms of porting excellence. And Tekken 3, in my opinion, Tekken 3, the console version is superior to the arcade version.
Interesting.
So on my research for this one, guys, what I saw as well, how the characters evolved through the series. And by evolved, I mean turned into nonsensical creatures that weren't animals anymore. One of them, I think it was on the third one, where you start getting characters and you were talking about the names for these animals. They sound like they're from the Guyver series, the Hyperzoonoid Team 5. I was like, this has been ripped straight out of early or late 90s manga. Yeah. And then you even had one character that had almost like Hyperzords for arms or something. Yeah. I was like, this was getting, it looked like it was getting really off the rails. I didn't experience.
Thank you for reminding me how cool this series became.
No, and Geoff, to your point as well, the transformations just became a little bit more cringy. Like Yugo on the fourth one, he turns into a wolf, but the wolf has like a shirt, a white shirt, nondescript shirt. It's like, if you're gonna be a wolf, why would you keep your shirt on?
Modesty.
You gotta. I guess it's a very modest wolf.
Good, wholesome Christian values, sir.
But I have the same question, guys, because I know you're all dog owners. I have the same question when I'm in Italy and everyone puts jackets on their dogs. Yeah. It's like, it's a dog. It's got fur for a reason.
Excuse me.
Why are you putting a shirt on it? Same thing, bloody wrong.
In a world with fur, why wear clothes?
The characters get more and more bizarre. It's so weird. Like, I don't think. I think we have enough beasts in the world that we can use. I don't know about you guys, but like, I think there's more than just like cats and dogs and tigers, right?
Yeah.
Yet somehow rising or aiding, whatever. I prefer calling them rising because aiding sounds just stupid.
Yeah.
But like, somehow rising just kind of went with these bizarre non-beasts as the beast modes for these characters. And honestly, I think that has something to do with why the series was failing. Like, you're getting off brand here. As bizarre and furry friendly as your brand is, you are getting off brand.
Why in a world of so many cool animals, why would you have to make your own animals up? And
I don't know.
The missed opportunities of not having a platypus transformation is bewildering.
It's a crime. It's a crime.
I honestly think that is your comeback story. Bloody Bloody Roar, the platypus is the protagonist. That's I think a seller right there.
I mentioned it at the start, but in the first one, we're talking about beasts, and they put a rabbit in. In what world is a rabbit a violent creature that you feel like could take on? I mean,
have you seen Monty Python's The Holy Grail?
In the second one, they have a house cat. So
that's true as well.
To be fair, though, the rabbit was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, she was good. No, I remember her being a good. But wasn't there a mole as well? Wasn't there?
The mole was great. Bacardi was great. I loved playing as him. But if you can make a mole work, you can make a platypus work. So,
it's true.
I agree.
Yeah. So, Bloody Roar 4, we're kind of starting to fall apart here. I talked about this with you guys before we actually started recording, and I thought I was making a good point, and then you guys shat all over me, which was the cover for Bloody... Jeff's looking at me like, really? The cover for Bloody Roar 4, the North American version, not great. Like your typical kind of CG, guy in the background, girl in the front. The guy in the background has the tribal tattoos endemic of the time, and so on. The Japanese cover has an eye and claw marks, and I thought that was super cool. And then Ozzy was like,
"It is cooler. I would much rather own this version than the American one for sure."
I would.
It's just not. It's just not good.
It's not good, and it was better and cooler when it was called Beast Wars Transformers. Which they did. It was also
Yes.
an eye.
Yes. You're right, but I guess I just have poor taste.
Welcome to the club, Paul.
Up your standards, Paul.
If you want excellent covers, check out the PAL release of Bloody Roar 1 and 2. They are full-on awesome anime art.
Are you
Like,
being
they are
ironic or are you
really
being
good.
serious?
Serious. They're good. The covers are really good.
God damn
Check
it.
'em out.
PAL region again. I
One of
say
the weird things of that generation that we didn't like touching Japanese box art.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you got something on us. Jeez. After all those years of late releases and so on, you gotta have something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am looking at the pop box art, and let me tell you, I love it. Geoff, you're right on point. The box art is fantastic. And it also brings to mind another point. Bloody Roar 2 has like 3 different subtitle names. Like Bringer of the New Age, Age of the New Breed. Like, I don't think they could settle on just one because they thought they were all equally as cool. And so they just threw them all in there. So in one menu, you may see a different title from the one that is on the cover. Sometimes it's just Bloody Roar 2. So,
Yeah.
anyways, why
sometimes it
did
is.
Bloody Roar 4 fail, Paul?
Well, there are a lot of reasons here.
It's a real
but Ozzy,
philosophical question there.
Just one thing before we get to the reasons Bloody Roar failed, or maybe this is part of it. The nonsense story. We're gonna play that right now. Have a listen. It's absolutely awesome. I loved it.
Throughout time, life forms on this planet have evolved and prospered. Some life forms do not evolve. But what is the cause behind the choices on who evolves and who dies? Gaia is a life form that is the entire Earth, and it has a self-balancing nature, and it is a way that the environment can be controlled. Mankind has taken on many forms through Gaia, through natural selection, as well as the unborn. The life forms that would have survived if they evolved. Exactly 1 year ago, during the X Genome Code incident, there were many riots on Earth by beasts that were not in the XGC. Soon it all ended, and no one knows the true cause of it, but people began to blame it on a stone seal. The seal is locked away, but the riots have increased even more. What is the cause behind it all? And can this be stopped?
Okay, so we've played it now. Ozzy, what do you think?
It's lovely. I think it's Oscar worthy. I wonder what that guy is doing nowadays. I wonder what sort of commercials he has been able to land based on that particular gig. I am pretty sure that he's doing very well for himself. It was very meaningful. It was very full of pathos and gravitas. So
the most disappointing thing about it is that if we had the instruction book and I had seen that story in the instruction book, I would have immediately demanded a Region Free Gamers dramatic reading of that story.
Can it be
Is
stopped?
it in the storybook? Is it in the manual?
I don't know, but it doesn't matter, dude. I can't top that guy. That guy's voice is super, super dramatic. And right at the end, can they be stopped?
I did watch it. I did watch it last night, and I think watching the streetwise long play and then watching that intro somehow created some convergence that like opened my third eye or something. Like it was too much to handle.
So for those of you that are not seeing us on video, I opened up my manual and that particular page is torn out. So
And I think there's a reason for it.
I can only assume that it couldn't be stopped, and that's, and that's the reason why it's torn out. And they went beast mode.
Yeah. So Bloody Roar 4 intro. I mean, I wouldn't say that's a reason why the series failed, but maybe it is. But I mean, if we're looking for reasons why it's gone and why it hasn't come back, I mean, first of all, as far as fighting games are concerned, early mid 2000s, that's kind of a low point in the whole genre.
Really,
because we've got like the, Bloody Roar 1 and 2, that's kind of the height of the 3D fighting game popularity, right? Like we've got Tekken, we've got Soul Calibur, we've got Virtua Fighter, we've got these games, even Street Fighter EX to an extent. Obviously, Final Fight Revenge too. Like
Yep.
this is the height of that genre's popularity. But then you get through the PS2 era, people are kind of tired of doing the same thing in 3D over and over again. And it isn't until online play and Street Fighter 4 in the PS3 era that we have a resurgence in the genre. So by the time Bloody Roar 3 and 4 comes along, the genre is just not there. Yeah. It's just not there to support them.
Yeah, and to the extent that there was any support for the fighting game genre, it was more weapons-based. So Soul Calibur was still pretty successful at the time. But even Tekken 4 was the low point of that franchise. Yep. And that came out around the same time. So, yeah, I agree with you, Paul. I think this was just the fate that would befall every copycat fighting franchise. They were just going to die. Because if a franchise like Street Fighter is not able to thrive in that market environment, then what hope does Bloody Roar ever have?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
No, and
I mean, it's
I
always
disagree.
When you're at the height of popularity of a specific genre, so many series just can take that momentum and just make something of it. But once popularity starts dying down, your audience starts whittling down. You're gonna eventually come down to like top 3-4 series. And when you're talking about 3D fighting games, like there's a lot of good series out there that they can't all be winners.
Nope, they can't.
Yeah, and it didn't help that Bloody Roar 4 was considered the lowest point in the franchise. I mean, it's a combination of that, and I think that maybe if there was still a cult following to Bloody Roar, I checked the Reddit last night, there were like 2 active subscribers on the Bloody Roar Reddit. They post every week or so, which I appreciate that they keep the fire going. And if there had been a cult following, I could have seen a smaller size Bloody Roar come out digitally at some point during the height of Street Fighter 4 or something like that. But because the last one was so bad and was so poorly received, it just left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And so it ended up being remembered as that copycat, no pun intended, clone, that was never as good as the other games that came out at the time. And I think that's a little bit unfair when you look back at what Bloody Roar 1 and 2 did. And to some extent 3.
Are we going to address the other pun intended elephant in the room on this?
The inclusion of the elephant or the removal of the elephant?
The removal of the elephant apparently didn't help the 4th entry, but that big, lovely elephant known as Konami.
Right.
And the fact that they own the franchise because they own Hudson.
I mean, that's a big part of it too, right? Like, Konami now owns Hudson's properties, and that includes Bloody Roar. And I don't trust Konami to manage their properties anymore. Do you guys?
I still hold out hope that Konami is going to sell all of its IPs. They're going to be strapped for cash, and then they're going to be like, okay, we are doing well with our health pass. Maybe not right now with COVID, and so that's why we're having to make actual video games. And we're just going to sell it all. Sell it all to Microsoft, because it seems like Sony's just fucking over all Japanese, the Japanese market as a whole. So sell it to Microsoft or something, and Microsoft can tap into that sweet, sweet Bomberman fan base that is so undying. So that's my hope.
It's undying.
But as Konami, if Konami keeps it, there is no hope in hell that they will ever, ever, ever bring back Bloody Roar.
No, and that's a big reason that it's just vanished.
I'm gonna make my hot pick lock of the week. Bloody Roar comes out in 2022 as a mobile game. With microtransactions to transform you into the animal.
Listen, I'm not even that ambitious, Arnie. I mean, just make a cameo of, I don't know, Yugo or something in like Bomberman or something, and I'm happy with that.
They'll give you a skin.
Just throw us a bone. Throw us a bone. Make him a DLC character in Contra Rogue, whatever, the one that just came out recently.
Rogue Core.
Yeah, just bring him out, and that's it. You play as Buckaroo the Mole, in Contra or something.
It's not that difficult, dude. Nintendo did it. Nintendo did it with Smash, and then suddenly Fire Emblem becomes a thing again, right? Like that is literally what happened. They include what was it, Marth in Super Smash
Ike.
Brothers. Everybody
Yeah.
loves him, and it's like, maybe this Fire Emblem thing has legs.
But I think that's also a point why Bloody Roar failed. I don't think that any of its characters were quite identifiable. I don't think any of them were so memorable that you say, man, I love Jugo. He was such a cool character. That was like on par with Ryu, or Ryu if you're a heathen. I don't think that any of them actually rose to that level, and it got even worse in Bloody Roar 4, where you had nondescript bald character with tribal tattoos. That, it just got worse and worse and worse. And so I don't think you can bring back almost any character from Bloody Roar and have it be recognizable and have people say, oh my god, it's fucking Bloody Roar. Maybe Jenny the Bat, I would say, or Gato the Lion, or Sheena the Panther, or the Leopard, or whatever she is.
The Reppard.
The Reppard, yeah. No, in Bloody Roar 2, she came out in Bloody Roar 2, and in Bloody Roar 2 they actually had a proper
they had a reasonable...
Yes.
You're right.
So no. It was like, Sheena the Leopard. So, yeah. So I think that's also part of the reason. Like, none of its characters were really memorable. And I think that's something that beyond... It's like they said, look, they're animals. They turn into animals. What more do you need? So yes, you actually kind of need some backstory. You need some character.
Or at least a backstory that's not quite as ridiculous as the one that we played. And can we also say that the gimmick just kind of fell out of favor? I think that's a pretty big reason. Like, we had Transformers Beast Wars. We had... we had that kind of golden age of furrydom, I guess. I don't know what else to call it.
Baby.
Animorphs, I think we're still living in the golden age of furrydom. I think now is the golden age. I think there's an untapped market here. I honestly think that this is due for a comeback.
This is the next GameStop, right?
Yeah, the environment is there. Make it a meme, then and make it take off. The bronies will be all along.
You could definitely meme it. There's definitely meme potential in here. If somebody were to discover it, yeah.
So we've dissected this now. What do you think? Is Bloody Roar more likely to return as a video game or a pachinko machine
I already gave you my lock of the week.
Neither. I think that they don't even realize they have Bloody Roar in their catalog. I think every once in a while someone realizes what they have and they're like, oh, well, I like that game. Too bad we're not doing anything with it.
Yeah. Geoff, what do you think? Is it coming back?
No chance.
Did Bloody Roar even make it onto like PSN ever, or like any digital storefront?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Yes,
All
first and second. You can still get the first and second game on PSN. Only on PS3, however, and that's becoming ever increasingly more difficult to buy games in the PS3 store. So,
that's the other thing we should, I guess, point out to people in case they're interested after we talk about this. All these games are insanely expensive. Well, they're not insanely expensive, but they're expensive. Like, I think Bloody Roar 4 is like $60 or something.
Well, the GameCube and the Xbox Ones have always kept their value. Those are games that I've always known them to be the more expensive entries in the series. But the rest of them, I think Bloody Roar 3 is going up a little bit more in price. It's now about $40. But the first and the second one are not that expensive. And plus, you can pick up the digital ones for $6.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, the digital is probably your best bet if you are curious about it but don't know if you're going to enjoy it or not.
One of the things that from this episode, now I want the GameCube or Xbox version. Maybe both. Who knows? Because, I don't know. I need the full Bloody Roar collection in my hands. And I will be I will be very disappointed if the manual is not ripped out completely. Because now it's just a trend with all my manuals for Bloody Roar. So...
All right, on that note, let's take a break, and when we come back, our final several series, I guess, for this episode. All right, everyone, we're back. And so this last segment, we're going to kind of cover several franchises kind of within the same genre, but really we're going to kind of be focusing on one. Joao, in his email to me, he asked, he was like, you know what, Wave Race, Wipeout, F-Zero, Ridge Racer, and I'm like, let's do all of them. So,
Yeah, why not?
and of course that, I mean, we can't really, because then we'd be here for another 2 hours, right?
Yeah, and we can't really talk about F-Zero or Wipeout because we already have a separate meta thread about that we need to address
and the
at some
conversation's
point.
just going to get too heated, your baseball cap there, Ozzy.
I don't want to go into beast mode, Paul. So in order to avoid me going into beast mode and accidentally shutting off this chat, let's just not touch Wipeout, please.
But I think we would do well to kind of represent this whole genre, which is like the arcadey racer.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would do well to use Wave Race kind of as our example, because we've never talked about it on the show, and it is fairly representative of what has happened to this genre as a whole, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
So Wave Race as a game, just some background here. I actually completely forgot that it debuted on the Game Boy in 1992.
Oh my god, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a 3-game series.
Yeah. And it was kind of like an overhead, like hard driving kind of Micro Machines-ish kind of game. Mm-hmm. You know, pretty good, actually,
Yeah.
you know, for a Game Boy game. But still a Game Boy game. But I think what people most remember Wave Race as is an N64 game, Wave Race 64. And I put it in my notes here. I came to the realization, every time I see a game with 64 in the title, I'm like, this is lazy shit. It's awful. And then I was like, wait, no, not as bad as the Wii U. I can't really shit on 64 as a naming convention anymore, because at least it wasn't the Wii U. So,
Shots fired.
Wave Race 64. Followed by Wave Race Blue Storm for the GameCube in 2001.
Which is
Actually,
a launch
pretty-
title, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think it was a
Yeah.
launch title, or at least very close to. I'd say it was a worthwhile sequel. Very little was added to it compared to Wave Race 64 outside of improved graphics, but they didn't remove anything either, so pretty nice little showcase there for the GameCube. And Blue Storm, actually, so the original Wave Race 64, that was Nintendo EAD. They're, the top tier team working on Wave Race for 64. But they actually outsourced Blue Storm to Nintendo Software Technology out of, I think, Seattle, or at the very least Washington State. And they did a good job. I mean, it looks great. There's a few control hiccups in there, like sometimes your jet ski can just kind of get stuck in objects, which is not so hot for a racing game. But that doesn't exactly happen very often. Also, by the way, just get good at the game. Like, don't hit things, right? I'm, just saying.
Fair enough.
Fairly unique, actually, among racing games, because when you're playing Ridge Racer, when you're playing F-Zero, when you're playing Wipeout, you're mainly just kind of worried about the horizontal plane. You're really just kind of worried about the x-axis. Wave Race, though, it's kind of like racing. I always thought of it kind of like racing on a bouncy castle, because the waves are just kind of like throwing you all over the place.
Yeah.
And you can adjust the pitch of your jet ski to kind of take advantage of that. So if you lean it forward, you kind of dive into the waves or dive into the water even sometimes to go underneath obstacles. So it really adds this kind of verticality that you just didn't find in other racing games.
I would say as opposed to Ridge Racer or Wipeout or F-Zero, I think the closest skin to Wave Race would probably be Jet Moto. Jet Moto had a very vertical component to it, probably even more so than Wave Race, because with Wave Race, it's still tied or tethered to the realism of you're in a jet ski. With Jet Moto, it's just you're in this fucking thing that goes up and down, and it goes really fast.
It's a moto, sir.
It's a moto. So, yeah, I think that it's similar, reason why that franchise failed. It's a mixture of the arcade racer kind of falling out of favor, but also the activity itself falling out of favor. And this is something that you're going to touch upon later, Paul. And jet skiing was pretty big in the 2000s. Anything that was deemed extreme was pretty popular in the 2000s. And anything that involved grievous bodily injury was very popular with the young guns. So I think Wave Race and Jet Moto benefited from that particular zeitgeist.
Yep. No, I agree. And we can get into it. I mean, have we all played Wave Race?
I've played 64.
Yeah, I've played 64 as well.
I mostly played the GameCube version.
Yeah, I've mostly played the GameCube version as well. It just seems like this. It seems like this game that everybody's played and nobody talks about anymore. Nintendo has teased a couple times, especially since the Switch has come out, and you can release just about anything on the Switch and it'll sell just because of the install base. They've teased a new Wave Race, but no, I don't think it's going to happen. But anyway, we'll get to that in a moment.
And even if it did happen, I don't think it would be successful. I don't think that its time is present anymore. I think it's just not something that would be successful in this day and age. But I think also Wave Race finds itself in a very similar position to F-Zero. You have Daddy Miyamoto at the top, and there was a reason why F-Zero was created, which was to showcase the Super Nintendo. And then they had, they threw a bone and they made a Nintendo 64 version. And, for the GameCube one, they were like, we don't even want to do this. So they gave it to Sega. And Sega did it, and they did the best F-Zero because it was Sega and not Nintendo. And I think that it's the same thing. I mean, Wave Race, the first one, well, I'm not counting the Game Boy one. I mean, that's kind of on a category of its own. But Wave Race 64, it was meant to show off this awesome graphics engine, and the physics that the 64 could provide. With respect to the GameCube version, it served the very same purpose, being cutting edge and showing that you could do this wave simulations with the GameCube and it could stand toe-to-toe with the PS2, and even exceed the PS2. After the GameCube, Nintendo just stopped giving a shit about being cutting edge. And they don't really have a reason to show off a Wave Race anymore. So if you can't really bring something new, like Miyamoto seems to want on every single fucking game, to the Wave Race franchise, then why would you revive it at all? It's the same reason that F-Zero is no longer present. It's just, there's just like, we can't add like gimmicky motion controllers to it, so we're just not gonna do it.
Pretty much. Like every Nintendo, new game tech demo that came out afterwards was motion controlled based, which sounds weird, but like, that's what it was. When the Wii comes out, the Wii is relatively underpowered. But it comes out with Wii Sports. Wii Sports turns into a phenomenon.
Yep.
There's just no need for a graphical showpiece for them anymore. And on other systems, it's the graphical showpiece really is your conventional racing game, your Gran Turismo, your Forza. So, yeah.
I also wonder, there was a period where water physics and water graphics were like, if you can pull that off, then you are talking serious business with your hardware.
Yeah.
And it feels like that conversation is completely, excuse the pun, dead in the water. It's just not, people just don't see, it's just a given now. Oh, water physics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, rain. Oh, yeah.
Back in the old days, Geoff, back in the old days, we used to look at water physics and...
I know, especially 64 at the time. Like, I don't know what you think, Ozzy, but to me it looked way better than Jet Moto.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind the excessive blurriness, like, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Purely on a graphical level, it did look better than Jet Moto. Because Jet Moto was just so much more jagged. But personally, I don't like my games smeared with Vaseline, so I just didn't take to Wave Race because it was just, I felt like I had to readjust my prescription for my glasses every single time that I played the Nintendo 64. But no, I mean, it goes back to, and I was thinking about this, and then Chris mentioned it on our Twitch chat, which is, Nintendo will revive franchises if they find a purpose for it. And this was the case with the Excite series, with Excite Bike. They brought it back for the Wii with Excite Truck and Excite Bots, which, by the way, underrated, fantastic games.
Yes, very much so.
But they wanted to showcase
all day long.
They wanted to showcase the steering wheel component of the motion controller, and so they brought it back. Since then, there has been no reason to bring back Excite. So why would you have an Excite? It would be a great franchise to have on the Switch, but there's no gimmicky motion controllers to use. So why would we do it? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, there is a possibility that Wave Race could come back if Nintendo finds a reason to do so. And If they don't, then I think Wave Race continues to be, as Geoff said, dead in the water.
What if they made like a Wii Fit board, but in a bucket, and you fill it with water, and that's how you control your jet ski? I think all right, I'm gonna patent this shit right now. Sorry, guys. Show's over. We're gonna go to the patent office.
We chose a missed opportunity to have used the balance board to do one of those stand-up wakeboards, stand-up, jet skis, and how you balance yourself on it, and the balance board. If they had some motors on it, it could kind of throw you off, but then that would be a tort liability waiting to happen. I just realized it as soon as I was saying it. I was like, ooh, yeah, that would. Why
don't we just forget about Wave Race altogether and bring back Hydro Thunder, which was my preferred water vehicle racer?
I don't know if they're ever bringing that back.
I would love it so much. I loved Hydro Thunder. I played it every time I went to the arcade next to my house. Always played Hydro Thunder.
If you want another jet ski franchise that's pretty good, Splashdown, particularly Rides Gone Wild, very cheap, very cheap, and it's very good. So definitely someone to check out. But yeah, I mean, just going back to why it failed. I mean, I don't quite put this in the same front as Ridge Racer and Wipeout and the like. I think it's more that jet skiing was just not a thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, dude. I remember when ESPN had 10,000 channels, the ESPN 8 to the Ocho, basically they would have not poker, right? Like they would have all these crazy sports, all these extreme sports, and then poker came along and took over everything, and you just never saw it again. Like you never saw jet ski X Games, just completely fell off the map as far as I could tell. So yeah, there's no market for it. And it's not it's not like a skateboard. A skateboard, I think, can always come back because everybody has access to a board with 4 wheels on it. It's not high tech. Jet ski? Please, man. There's no way in hell I will ever jet ski around where I live.
But do we miss this franchise? I guess that's the question. I mean, are we so ardent on bringing back this jet ski love that we want this franchise to come back? I mean, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it's just I struggle to think what its purpose is in the modern arena, because if you want to play Wave Race, you have 2 perfectly well-made games there that you can always go back to and play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think
I mean, I would rather Nintendo invest their time and money elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or saying that, just give us a GameCube collection on the Switch.
Oh, that would be lovely.
And give us,
but it would never
some
happen.
Pikmin, give us some Wave Race, give us some Luigi's Mansion, and just go, here's some old GameCube games, and that would be one of them. Like, you don't need to do anything to it. You've done that with Mario All-Stars. Yeah. Like, just map the controls to the Switch Joy-Cons, and you're good, and you give us some rumble features.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Nintendo, I mean, at the moment they're too busy dealing with a theme park to worry about actual new video games. Shots fired, but
is this something that could work better in VR? With you getting
You're
the
just
feel of the waves.
Paul to vomit.
Are you kidding me? I could barely handle the X-axis, let alone the Y.
Getting drenched in sun, seeing girls in bikinis somewhere off into the distance, and just going up and down as you would love to do, Paul.
Just bobbing.
No, thank you.
You're trying to get them sued for killing a person.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be better in VR. Can you imagine how cool it would be if you hit a big wave and then you point the nose of your jet ski down and you briefly go underwater?
Oh, I'm getting vertigo just listening to this.
But it would be really
It'd be cool. It'd be awesome.
Yeah,
it would also be like an assault on your senses.
And Nintendo's never going to do it.
Yeah.
They're just not the VR company, right? So as a franchise, they'd have to just kind of give it to Sony, which that's never going to happen.
I think the best you could hope for, if they haven't done it already, is for them to throw them up on the eShop and just play them that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Are we forgetting about the effect of Gran Turismo here? Because it seems like every time we talk about one of these kind of racing games, Gran Turismo comes up as the reason that they're dead. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually probably a pretty big reason.
I disagree. I think that they're distinct enough that they don't really share the same space.
Yeah. If there is an effect from Gran Turismo, I think it'd be less than other racers that aren't water-based, basically, because I think that's the difference, for me at least. That what I get from Wave Race, I'm not going to get from Gran Turismo, and vice versa.
Whereas with Ridge Racer, then you could just get it from Gran Turismo, and
Yeah, the Venn diagram is just so far apart there. I mean, it doesn't seem like they share the same space at all.
When you look at people who enjoy racing games, if you just say people who like racing, beating people on laps and just go doing a circuit again and again until you reached circuit number 5 complete. I mean, when I think, and I've used him as an example for our King of 98 series with my brother, who loved racing games out of the two of us, he would play anything that was a racing game because he just liked the aspect of racing and beating and taking corners, understanding the physics of the game and just getting good at it. It didn't mean that he played every single racing game, but a wave race would have been for him and okay, you know, a good game for him to play. But as soon as he saw Gran Turismo, it's like, well, being a racing fan, I naturally prefer cars because I have a car in the driveway that I can use. So it's an immediate pull. Whereas Wave Race, as a series, I think relied far more on people like us to buy. And how often are you going to re-buy Wave Race each generation? It's relying on us to buy it. It's not relying on people who love Gran Turismo to buy it. Because they've now got their Gran Turismo. But are we likely to constantly re-buy something which is never going to see any kind of overhaul? You know, I say that, and Nintendo just announced Mario Golf. And you think, well, is it going to be any different to Toadstool Tour, which is, apart from running from hole to hole, is not a lot different to like what they've already done. But they know there's a market of people who will just keep rebuying it. I just don't think Wave Race has a group of people that will just keep rebuying it. It's just, there's just no money in it.
And here's another thing, Geoff. The fact is that you could implement this activity into a separate game like Grand Theft Auto 5 that can emulate this experience just as well, but has this whole other game attached to it.
Absolutely.
So it makes less sense to pay $60 for a game that just focuses on racing jet skis. And I think that we look for much more value out of our games than just a single activity. And I think we've been spoiled by the GTAs of this world, you know, with respect to that.
Good point.
Yeah, and that's what I meant at this, when I was talking at the start about the like how water physics was such an important thing at the time of like who's going to, you know, the next generation, how are they going to do water? Whereas now any game can have good water in it, good water physics in it, because it's just part of the Unreal engine. You know, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't. It's not the thing that sells a game. So I think you're absolutely right, Ozzy. It will be in GTA 6 if that ever gets made.
By the way, I love the waves in GTA 5. I don't know what they do with those waves, but I love them. There's just something very calming and soothing about them. But
I think Uncharted 3 did an amazing job with the water in that boat sinking.
Terrible
chapter.
Game. Amazing water physics.
but that one bit was a technical masterpiece. But yeah, that's where it's like, I think Wave Race put it, as you say, put it as part of that jet ski.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been on a jet ski.
So I guess Wavy Race is in Davy Jones's locker for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I don't see this one coming back.
Yeah. I mean, it had a good run. It had 2 very good games. You can still play them. Yeah. Wave Race 64 still holds up. It's a good one. I think Wave Race 64 actually came out on the Wii U on the Virtual Console, so maybe I'm wrong with respect to that, but it may have. So make sure to check that out.
I think you're right. I think it did.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of them are particularly expensive, so even if you wanted to get physical copies of them, it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, especially the GameCube one. GameCube one's like $20 or something like that. So if you really wanted to play it on the GameCube, and it looks great. Like
you can pretty much find it in any secondhand shop.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Before we end this episode, I don't know if you want to mention anything else, Paul, before we end the episode, because I want to take it back to our earlier segment on Bloody Roar, just for a quick second.
You're being very coy. I don't know what you're getting at, so get on with it.
I just found out that there's a thing such as clinical lycanthropy, in which it's defined as a rare psychiatric syndrome that involves a delusion that the affected person can transform into, has transformed into, or is an animal. I think I found my preferred clinical disease of choice.
Dude, that is one guy trolling the entire psychiatric industry. That's what that is. I can't believe that's an actual diagnosis.
I have to think. I have to
lycanthropy.
think that the designer of Bloody Roar suffers from this, and he was just trying to express. He was trying to yell out at us for help.
Yes.
And bring up more awareness for clinical lycanthropy. I wonder if it's going to have its own month. Clinical lycanthropy awareness month.
Yeah, maybe it will. Maybe it will. It'll be April, specifically April 1st. All right. I think on that note, we can definitely end the show. So again, everybody, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for joining us. This episode was a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Joao, for suggesting this to us. This was a great idea, a lot of fun to research, and a lot of fun to do the show on. So we really
and now I
appreciate
guess I have to go back to Mount Doom now, I suppose, right?
Yes, you do. You have to go crawl back into your volcanic hole until we unearth you again for a later episode.
At least they have good Filet O Fish sandwiches there, so I think I'm fine.
But I think that this, I think we could easily do another one of these episodes within the next 12 months. There's
absolutely.
a lot of series out there and a lot of genres out there.
A lot
we
of
could
meat
pick
on
apart.
this bone. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we need to
sure.
I think we need to do one dedicated to just Castlevania and Contra, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that one there, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I think we could turn this into a series. I mean, why not annualize it? Make it a cash cow. Why not? There's gold in them mines.
All right. So everybody, thanks so much for listening again. Please rate and review. And if you want to talk to us, you can find us on Instagram. We are at Region Free Gamers Podcast. On Twitter, we are at Region Free Gamer. And you can visit us Patreon/Region Free Gamers if you'd like to contribute in a more monetary manner. We certainly won't say no.
And you get to talk to us on Discord, which
Yes,
you're going to get
absolutely.
a lot of fun talk about Filet O Fishes, a lot of fun game speculation, and the occasional spat between F-Zero and Wipeout. So definitely, it's a good time as always.
Absolutely. So thanks again, Ozzy, Arnie, Geoff. Thanks so much, guys.
See you.
You're welcome.
All right,
See you,
take
boys.
care. Not the suplex!